Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weave from Sportsnet, who's down in Long Island for the game tonight. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after what I would assume is a frustrating loss for Winnipeg Jets fans. If you're out there, Savage 9100 says the Jets had their chances, and an elite team would have buried the chances, and the Jets are not there. Trade deadline should be interesting. Matt Robichaux goes a little further, says trade Scheifele, and I think there's a lot of people who are feeling from what they saw there. Cody B, he says they need a big shakeup. Everyone on that coaching staff should be gone. People are upset. They're up in arms. We understand that. I take a look at this game. I think what I would find most frustrating about this game, where the Jets lost that game, I think, people would take and point out clearly they lost it at the beginning of the second period when the New York Islanders came out and they were absolutely buzzing. But I would go further than that. I would go that the Winnipeg Jets lost that game, not just in those first 2 minutes, but in the entire first period of that game. It was the Islanders' first period. They owned it. They were all over them. And then by a pure stroke of luck, I maybe I shouldn't call it a pure stroke of luck, but a defensive faux pas you would not expect to see from a Barry Trotz coach team, from this New York Islanders team, to create a 2-on-1 for Nick Ehlers and Kyle Connor. And by the way, how are those guys that far down the ice when there's a play pressing up ice by the New York Islanders? To me, what that showed me was that the Winnipeg Jets were still in the mode they were the night before when they played the New Jersey Devils. And I talked about this, and I'd said that this was the Winnipeg Jets playing how we've seen them play in the past, getting outplayed, getting outchanced, but sticking with it, kind of surviving defensively, rope-a-dope, and then jumping back and scoring, off of some opportunistic plays. I've been very vocal for a long time. I don't like those Jets wins. I don't think they're very good wins. Now, I said yesterday, they got the 2 points. That's what matters. But in this case, the Winnipeg Jets, and I don't like saying got a better fate. We've talked about this before, but the Winnipeg Jets, in my mind, escaped New Jersey yesterday with 2 points and should have realized that. There should have been a realization that the game they played against New Jersey is not a game they want to replicate. There's a different style to be played to have success. The game against New Jersey is not a style that is going to allow you to win a lot of games. And I think that is one of the things about this Jets team. I think there's a potential for them to kind of fall for their own hype, for their ability to score their way back into games. And rather than say, we really didn't put in the effort we should have, to say, yeah, we've got a veteran team. We know how to score our way back into games. We've got stick-to-itiveness. We don't give up the fight, or we didn't give up the fight, was a line that Maurice liked to use that became a buzz phrase around the Winnipeg Jets. This is why I don't like that. The Winnipeg Jets came out and continued that game against New Jersey in the first period against the Islanders, scored their way back into a game they shouldn't have been with some opportunistic scoring. And rather than take that as, okay, we took the first period off, let's start cruising in this game, they took the beginning of the second period off as well. They just, it was, to me, it was a chance in that first period for the Jets to have learned their lesson and righted the ship in that game. And instead, they came out after making a slight push at the end of the first period. They weren't there at the beginning of the second. Let the Islanders get to their net. Suddenly, it's 3-1, and essentially the game is over as the Jets only get two goals. Now, did they push from that point on? I thought the last half of the second period they absolutely dominated. They come out, they start the third period how you want a team to, making a strong push, getting a goal. It was looking to be one of those games where the Jets were going to, use their veteran savvy, use their opportunistic scoring and get back into that game. But you can't count on that every night. You definitely can't count on it against a team coached by Barry Trotz that knows how to shut things down defensively. And I just take a look at this. We've talked about this time and time again. The gap, the margin of error is shrinking vastly every time one of these losses happen. My guess is the Jets are going to now be under 5% chance of making the playoffs. So that gap is shrinking. There's simply no room to not show up for the first half of a hockey game and expect to come out and win that and expect to stay in the playoff fight. Tough one, if you ask me. The Jets weren't in the right mindset to compete at the beginning of this night. That's the way I see it. Time to find out what Ken thinks about the entire thing. Let's bring him in from down on Long Island. Here's Kenny. Wrong music. Here's Kenny. Kenny, my friend, you're looking good. Down enjoying, I hope, some good pasta. I hope you haven't been messing with the unions while down in New Jersey, or you were able to find your way safely to the hotel last night. Sounds like there's still something going on in the rink down there.
Yeah, we got a little rec hockey action happening here. It looks like a family ice rental, and they got the goal horn going and everything. We got, looks like maybe... just a whole bunch of family folks. We got sisters, brothers, we got parents out there, it looks like. People are fired up. There's people in the stands. And again, what a thrill. I mean, we used to... and also that's a classic. Michael Capti, we hear birds. There are birds living up at the top of the ceiling here at UBS Arena. It's new, but they have some early occupants. But great little... great barn, fun atmosphere here. It was an interesting tilt for the home side. They haven't had a ton to cheer about this year in New York Islander land, but they did a nice job playing to their structure. And I do agree with you, Sean, wholeheartedly. The Jets were... Here's the problem with having almost zero margin for error. When you get a flat game, you're going to get over a quarter season period, there are going to be flat games. So this was one of them. It was poorly timed by the Winnipeg Jets. They were able to pull one out of the old rabbit out of the hat yesterday, thanks to excellent goaltending and timely scoring. The Jets weren't ready for the New York Islanders. They were certainly not ready to start the second period after being fortunate to be tied 1-1. And yes, they did push, as you mentioned, but the finish wasn't there. And guess what? The Jets now find themselves another step closer to, next year country. That's a tough situation for them, but that's where they're at. I mean, they're going to have to rebound if they want to finish this road trip off with a strong or positive note. They were just not good enough today in so many areas. And the worst area for the Winnipeg Jets today, Sean, was the area in front of the blue paint.
Yeah, my goodness.
That was a struggle. The struggle was real. The box outs were not strong enough. The clear outs were not. There was not enough inside leverage. And I mean, Josh Morrissey wasn't pointing fingers, but there were too many shots coming from either the slot or from the point. That puts a lot of pressure on those defensemen in front of the net. And, you've talked about it a ton, Sean. The opponent showed plenty of willingness to get to the blue paint, and the Jets didn't show enough of it at the other end. It was a tough showing for them. No excuses. I think that we'll dig into the goaltending shortly, but defensively they were just not sound. Their puck management once again was mediocre to poor, and even though Nikolai Ehlers didn't feel like his team got frustrated by the structure of the New York Islanders, I felt like they were frustrated, especially in the first period where, they went almost 12 minutes without generating a single shot on net before all of a sudden there's a 2-0. And the most, not only was Nikolai Ehlers shocked that it was a 2-0, mm-hmm. Neil Pionk essentially looked up and couldn't believe that he had a clear path to find Nikolai Ehlers on the play. And again, people think this is easy and you should score every single time on a 2-0. Nikolai Ehlers basically telegraphed that he was passing, but he waited until the perfect time until Kyle Connor opened up for him. I mean, yes, that should be a tap in, sure, but if the goalie knows you're going to shoot, you have to make sure you make a perfect pass, and it was just a fantastic shot by Connor, who's up to 36 goals. But, I mean, outside of that, the Jets really had nothing to cheer about. I mean, their second goal was lucky. There's no other way to describe it. I mean, it's a slap shot that goes off the skate of Paul Stastny in front, and Blake Wheeler swings at it and misses. It hits his skate, then it hits Scott Mayfield, and goes into the back of the net. So, yes, I mean, credit for going to the net on that play. Paul Stastny providing a great screen, and the puck, fortuitously bouncing over to Wheeler's way. But after pulling within a goal, the Jets didn't turn it up at that point, Sean. They got worse, and they gave up a goal very shortly thereafter, and then they were back to chasing the game again. So, I mean, it's just, this is another example of, the Jets. This is what the Jets are. This is what the Jets are. They win 2 games. They have some self-inflicted wounds. They make it look like they might be turning a corner. They play a team that they probably, the Islanders went to 2 Eastern Conference Finals, Game 7s. Outstanding run they've been on. But this year, that's not who the New York Islanders have been. They've been decimated by COVID and some injuries. But guess what? Now they're feeling good about themselves. They smoked the Columbus Blue Jackets 6-0 last night. And today, they looked a lot more like a team that went to the conference final 2 seasons in a row. But again, that's a game the Jets can't afford to lose, and guess what? They lost it.
I like your comment about this is who the Jets are. I was at the Friday hockey today. Ken
there you
got
go,
me
nice.
to a game that we play. And when we were done in the dressing room, one of the fellas had asked me what was going to happen tonight, and I said this the other day on CJOB. It was like, who knows? Like, who knows which version of this team is going to show up? Now, I did say I didn't think it boded well for them to play against the New York Islanders, because I think what we've seen over the last little while, the Jets love playing wide open hockey, and it doesn't matter who they're playing it against. If you allow the Jets to play wide open hockey, they're probably going to outdo you at it. They outdid the Tampa Bay Lightning at it. They outdid the Montreal Canadiens at it. They love playing that style of hockey. Well, guess what? Take a look at the last time the Jets played the New York Islanders. Doesn't matter how bad they are. Their style of hockey is a style of hockey the Winnipeg Jets don't like to play. So I didn't like their chances coming into this game because of that. But I mean, I think you're bang on. I don't think there was enough effort there. Like I'd said, in the first 30 minutes of this game, their effort wasn't there. And before you go saying to me, yeah, well, it was a back-to-back. Well, guess what? The New York Islanders played last night as well. He's back.
DJ, welcome back. Welcome back. How'd you think the Columbus Blue Jackets played for the 2 weeks prior when Patrick Laine was on a heater?
I wanted to touch on something here because I said this earlier in the show. Kenny's water bottle says Jets have 26 wins in 59 games. What hype are they falling for? I'm going to kind of hammer down what I'm talking about here, because you're right. Like, a team that is outside of the playoffs shouldn't be falling for its own hype. But I would contend this is a team that last year, when they were playing, kind of the brand of hockey that Paul Stastny came out and said we haven't been playing for a real long time, was in the window where Kyle Connor said, we're good and we know it, right? This is the same team that in the offseason, after getting absolutely destroyed by the Montreal Canadiens, talked about being on the cusp of being a dynasty, right? Like jumping the shark all the way, never mind to making the playoffs, never mind to winning a Stanley Cup, to winning multiple Stanley Cups. And the point of what I'm saying is I thought Jeff Cabilles, he should probably text me or give me a pronouncer, because I brought him up a couple times in the show and I want to make sure I'm pronouncing it right here. But he'd said the Jets are that team that keep touching the hot cookies over and over again. And I think he is bang on with that. This is a team that went last night and they pull off a victory last night. And again, instead of being a team that says, wow, that's not the way to do this, they say, yeah, we can pull that off time and time, because they've done it. You can't blame them for it. They've done it so often where they put in a lackluster effort. They haven't been at their best, and they've pulled out games like that. And I do think believing their own hype is that in the Jets' minds, they can go out on some nights and not have their best and pull it out with opportunistic scoring, because they're capable of doing it. And I think that after the worst thing, Ken, now that I think about it, that could have happened to the Winnipeg Jets tonight was scoring that first goal of the game. There's going to be people in the chat room who are going to say that I'm an idiot for saying that. Go for it. But the Jets scored that goal after getting absolutely pumped in the first period, tied that game, and got to walk in the dressing room and say, yeah, boys, way to pull that one out. We tied that period, right? And then they came out and the effort wasn't right in the first 10 minutes of the second period, and they lost the game. If they hadn't scored there, they would have had to have gone into the dressing room and said, okay, boys, we limited the damage. Yeah, that was their period, but we limited the damage. Now we got to turn things around, and now we got to get going. And maybe they would have come out in the second period the way that they did in the third period. But that is my point about this. I think that this is a team that kind of falls into this style of game, like I said, that they like to play. The game that they played against the Tampa Bay Lightning, where they like to be free-flowing and scoring. And when it's not working like that, what they like to do is survive the press, chip the puck behind the defenseman, get men down the ice, odd man rushes, score, and walk away with the game like that. That's how they like to play. If you don't want to play wide open hockey against them, that's how they like to play, and I do think it burned them tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they were trying to play rope-a-dope hockey. I just think that they were...
I don't think they ever are. I just think they
No, fair.
Into it.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have their legs going. And I mean, Nikolai Ehlers was very blunt once again when he was asked about the top, start of the second period. He said they were watching the puck, plain and simple, and that's what happened to them. I mean, they were watching, and what they were watching was players. I mean, the backhand pass from Beauvillier was outstanding, right? So, really good. But where was the coverage on Brock Nelson? Where's the center on center in that situation? Nowhere to be found. And then the rebound for Josh Bailey is just laying there. And then they just didn't do a good enough job in front of the net. And they sort of, I love when you use the word, the Jets were discombobulated in front of their own net. Their communication was poor, and they didn't do a good enough job of clearing the front of the net. And I just didn't see them getting to the same areas in front of Semyon Varlamov. Did you?
Oh, no. And I mean, this is interesting because someone was talking about, I didn't hear this, I didn't listen to the Islanders speak for the game, but someone was saying that they were ripping on him and saying they couldn't believe he was a Vezina Trophy winner a couple of years ago. Well, believe it. He's been one of the best goaltenders in the league for a long time. That's a ridiculous comment if they're saying that. Now, did Hellebuyck steal the game tonight? No, he didn't. But those goals, when a goaltender has made the stop. Now, you may have something to say about the rebounds that he gave up, right? They're not the best rebounds. It's not like he was Marty Brodeur and redirecting every rebound into the corner and not kicking it out to the slot. Never mind sometimes kicking the puck out right onto the stick of one of his players, aiding in them bailing out of the zone. So maybe you can say something about the fact, or let's say you can say something about the fact that he stopped some pucks and left the rebound sitting there. But especially on the third goal, Ken, like the second goal, it's for that to happen that early in the game and you to get the puck alone on the side of the net and score. Okay, you made that happen, but they made the same mistake twice, and the mistake on the third goal was worse than on the second goal. He had all the time in the world to score that. So I just, again, it's to me the start wasn't there in the first. The start wasn't there in the second. And I do want to point something out. One thing the Jets should have been very cognizant in this is in their last 4 wins, they've scored first in the game. If you take a look at what it's taken for them to win, they ran up the score on Montreal, ran up the score on Tampa, got up on Jersey, and then kind of shut things down so that they weren't playing from behind. But just for a team that has shown itself lately that it needs to get a good start to win hockey games, the way they came out tonight I thought was absolutely inexcusable. And again, I don't know, Ken, how much of a lack of effort it was. There wasn't a lot of travel involved for them after the game last night. To me, it's quite simply a team that fell into a style of hockey last night that they pulled off a game, and they never stopped playing that style until halfway through this game.
Yeah, I'm going to turn back just briefly. Obviously, for folks who didn't watch the post game, I just want to go into. I mean, obviously, Josh Morrissey was asked about Connor Hellebuck. We know it's been a tough stretch for him now. It's 6 consecutive games of 4 goals or more allowed by him. 5 of 4 and 1 of 6 against the Colorado Avalanche. I mean, Mike McIntyre asked Josh about, the question about whether it's fair to pin this on the goaltender, which is a feeling that a lot of people in the chat room have expressed. I don't necessarily share that feeling, but Josh was very passionate. He said, not at all. I mean, in fact, that's something that bothers me because he's been the heart and soul of our team back there since we've been relevant in this league. The guy battles and competes on pucks. I mean, a few years ago, you look back at it, we wouldn't have been able to be even close to getting into the play-in series that year if it wasn't for him. And last year as well. I understand that when you're a goaltender, you get that criticism and he puts more pressure on himself than any external source could, whether it's the media or anything like that. But you know what? It's not fair to him. So, I mean, again, it's not surprising to hear a teammate defend his, the guy who's been the foundational piece for him. But I mean, and I agree in a lot of ways with Josh Morrissey, but here's the thing right now. No one is blaming Connor Hellebuck, but what the fact remains, Sean, Connor Hellebuck is not stealing games for the Winnipeg Jets right now. And again, it's not fair to say he has to steal every game, and that's not what I'm saying. But Connor Hellebuck has the ability to be a difference maker, and right now, he's been the second best goalie on the ice on too many nights for the Jets to be relevant in the playoff chase. Which leads me to the question that I'm going to ask you right now as you step to the buffet. If you're Dave Lowry, Sean, based on our conversation last game where we've talked all so much about what you deserve and what you've earned, do you consider starting Eric Comrie on Sunday against the St. Louis Blues to wrap up this road trip?
Entirely. I mean, that was there is no other place I would go, and I don't say that to punch down on Connor Hellebuck after he has a bad game. Sorry, and I don't necessarily think that he had that bad of a game. I think that he was let down by his defense a little bit.
Agreed.
But clearly, it seems like, and you've said this before, and this is not. I'm not saying that Connor Hellebuck's teammates are not playing for him. Don't mistake the comments that I'm about to make to say that. But I will say, and you've said this before, we know Eric Comrie. He was on Kenny and Renny. We had an episode of Kenny and Renny with him. Phenomenal person, phenomenal guy. Everybody loves this guy, and everyone wants to see him succeed. And I think that creeps into your psyche. Now, Connor Hellebuck, it's not that they're not playing for him, but Connor Hellebuck is the standard. He's the normal, right? He's the guy who's been around for the longest time. So you're not getting that extra pop when Connor Hellebuck steps into the net because that's where he's always is, and that's where he's always going to be. You know that. But when Eric Comrie hops in, and for a good chunk of the season, a guy who's trying to establish himself as an NHLer, a guy that you like a lot, a guy that you're rooting for, you want to pop up and you want to play for that guy. When that guy has gone out and done the job that he's done this season to keep you somewhat within the playoff fight, again, less than a 5% chance of making the playoffs. A lot of people in the chat room are going to say out and out they're out of the playoff race. But even the fact that it's a conversation has to do with how the backup goaltender has played here. He has shown time and time again he can light a spark for this team. I would have absolutely no problem with it. Now, how's Connor Hellebuck going to take that? I don't know. We had a conversation last show. My take is from what he's shown in the past that he is going to be he's going to fight. He's going to fight for his crease. That's what he would do in a situation like that. And I think, if you got to pull out all the stops to make it to the playoffs, that's a stop that has yet to be pulled out to try and fire up your goaltender. Is there danger in that? Yeah, there is. Here's the deal. We talked about this. The core of this team, right at the front of it is Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele, and Connor Hellebuck. They each have 2 years left. I don't know if decisions are made within that dressing room based on not ruffling feathers with those players. I don't know if you're thinking to yourself, do not piss off Connor Hellebuck, because then maybe in a couple of years he's not going to want to stick around here. If they are, that's a mistake. You can't run a hockey team like that. You have to run a hockey team based on what you think is best for the team in that moment. And the people who lose time, lose opportunity in those decisions, just have to man up and realize they're getting paid to produce, and that's what they have to do. They have to fight their way back in. So, and I'm not saying that Connor Hellebuyck would do that. I'm just saying that maybe I think that would be the only risk that you would have by doing that. But Kenny, I did go to the buffet on that. It's probably a longer answer than it deserved, but no doubt would I be going to Eric Comrie in the next game. I just don't think it's going to happen. You?
I think there's a chance. I'm not here saying it's a lock to happen. I do think that what I'm seeing is an awful lot of frustration, and to me, this goes back to the other night, the Shesterkin commentary. I mean, I applaud Connor Hellebuyck, and I think it shows maturity for him to speak highly of opposing goalies, because we know how it went the last time when he thought he liked his game better than someone else's, when that someone else was posting a .960 save percentage in a series that ended in 5 games, and where the other goalie was the actual difference maker. So to me, I thought that showed some maturity, but he also looked a little demoralized that day. So to me, this is how I sell it if I'm Dave Lowry. I go to Connor Hellebuyck, or I have Wade Flaherty go to Connor Hellebuyck, and I say this is simple. Connor, we believe in you, but we think you need a quick reset. Based on what we've seen this weekend, back-to-back games, day off tomorrow, travel day, there's not any practice time here. But there will be practice time when the Jets get home. I think that Comrie could start on Sunday. I'm not saying he could run the table till he loses. I think there is an opportunity here to play Comrie on Sunday, and you sell it as a goalie coach or as a head coach by saying, we just need to give you a break. Allow yourself to exhale. We know Connor Hellebuyck wants to play every game, and we know, based on his history, Connor Hellebuyck could steal a game at any time, right? That's the other part of this. And Connor Hellebuyck has had moments and stretches where he's been excellent this year. And again, I'm not blaming him by any stretch, but right now, Eric Comrie is in a little better headspace than Connor Hellebuyck. And I think part of that is because even though he says he feels good, there has to be an element of fatigue. Tonight was start number 59 49 out of 59 games Connor Hellebuyck has started. So that's a lot of games, no matter who you are, no matter what kind of shape you are, no matter how much will you show to battle through. So right now, Comrie is providing solid play in the crease. We know that Eric Comrie has already beaten the St. Louis Blues in St. Louis. I think you consider doing that. It also, the other thing, Sean, you know this very well. When you put your backup in, it puts the team on high alert. Based on what you were saying, Sean, about how the Jets kind of felt they were still in yesterday's mode, when you have your backup in, you're on your toes because you're not expecting the backup to bail you out. That's not to say that they don't respect what the backup can do, but I think that there is always a sharpness that comes when a team plays their backup. So to me, I think that would help get the Jets ready for the game on Sunday. We know the urgency has to be there. I'm not ruling it out. I'm with you. It's probably, I would say it's more unlikely than likely, but I don't think it's a 0% chance. But the other thing we also have to consider too is that the Jets have been going by their schedule, and they don't deviate from that schedule very often. Eric Comrie saying he knew a week ago that he was playing against New Jersey. So would you change course right now based on the circumstances and the situation? I don't know. But I think it's under consideration. It would be something that if I were Dave Lowry and Wade Flaherty, I would consider doing it. And it's not to say there is not a goaltending controversy. This is not saying Eric Comrie deserves to be the number one guy. No, he deserves to play a little bit more. And I think that he could allow an opportunity for Connor Hellebuyck to reset, because they're going to need Hellebuyck to be at his very sharpest coming up. And right now, I don't know that a flight to St. Louis will allow Connor Hellebuyck the time necessary to reset and be ready. Eric Comrie's feeling great about himself right now, and Connor Hellebuyck has no shortage of confidence. But right now, Eric Comrie's feeling better about how his game looks right now, which is why I would consider starting him as well.
Well, and I think you said it right there. The backup, the job of the backup is to support the goaltender. Pick that goaltender up when he's down. I don't think that if you asked Connor Hellebuck right now, and listen, we've heard enough of this from Connor Hellebuck over the years. I like my game after he gets shelled 5-0 or something like that. Like, Connor Hellebuck is that guy who comes out and, you know, is absolutely unstoppable. Gets a shutout and stops 42 shots and says, you know, I could have been better, and then goes out and loses 5-0 and says, I like that game, because he doesn't want to get too high, too low. You can see it in how he responds to things. But even Connor Hellebuck, I think at this moment, if you asked him about his game, he would tell you he's not at the top of his game right now. That's what your backup is for. Your backup is to carry the load when things aren't going as they properly are. And Ken, you had touched on the Jets having their schedule laid out in front of them, and they don't vary from that schedule very often. Well, maybe that's part of the problem. I mean, if we're taking a look here and we're thinking you need to shake something up, you need to do something different to affect a different outcome, this is one of these things you could try. Ride a hot goaltender. Give a guy who's won you some games a chance to win you more games, to stick to a predetermined schedule because that's what you wrote in your calendar, because that's what your star goaltender wanted back then, and now your star goaltender is not playing at the top of his game. That, to me, is ludicrous. Like, desperate times call for desperate measures, and this isn't even a desperate measure, but they're treating it like it's one, and I don't think they can be doing that. Ken, I know you're not going to be around for the whole show. Stick around as long as you want or as long as you can, but we're going to bring in our main man, Scotty Billick, who's going to help us carry the load here. He's got his wake-up cup, so look out, people. Don't be – you better have good takes, because Scotty's not afraid to use that thing. If it comes down to it. Scotty, jump in on what we were just talking about here. Seems to be a hot topic of conversation. Connor Hellebuck or Eric Comrie in the next game? Who would you be going with?
I mean, I still stick with Connor Hellebuck, but I mean, I hear what you're saying, right? Desperate times, desperate measures. Here's the simple fact is the Jets need to play better in front of Connor Hellebuck. I mean, for a long time, they've sat there and allowed, you know, what happened tonight, you know, to happen, and Connor Hellebuck's made the saves, right? Like, it's not happening right now. But I mean, if you're going to go in and against New Jersey and only allow a single goal and play really well against Eric Comrie, why can't you do the same thing in front of Connor Hellebuck? I mean, here's the thing: it's not like if the Jets make the playoffs, Connor Hellebuck's starting in between the pipes, right? Like, it's not like Eric Comrie's starting in the playoffs for the Winnipeg Jets, so they need to play better in front of Connor Hellebuck, and I thought Josh Morrissey, you know, made that relatively clear after the game that this isn't on Hellebuck. I mean, you know, we can point, you know, they won't point the fingers, but we can. Brendan Dillon was, you know, a phantom on a couple of those goals where he needs to box out the guy and be there. Nobody's like, I don't understand why the Jets are one of the few teams that I watch where they just allow guys to roam free in front of their goalie, and then when the shot comes in, and it comes in off of, you know, the Anders, not the Anders Lee goal, the Brock Nelson 4-2 goal. I mean, that shot comes in, and is it my sound?
You're a little hot, yeah.
I'm a little hot. Oh, geez, okay. At least I'm not
okay.
a little low,
I like the intensity. It's okay.
But I mean, I guess, you know, my whole thing is, like, I mean, if you're going to allow a shot to come through that Connor Hellebuck doesn't see, and then you're hoping that he picks up the read on the rebound right away when he hasn't even seen the shot come through, what do you expect from him? I mean, and Josh Morrissey said this after, like, what do you expect on second, third, and fourth chances? And yeah, I'll change my mic here. It's hard. I can't do two things at once. I'm horrible at it. But,
well, it sounds like people couldn't hear me. I've switched mics. Can people hear me now?
No.
Give me a heads up.
I can hear you, yes.
Okay,
no,
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, good.
I tried to. Is mine less hot?
Well,
maybe
you
I'm
can
just
go
a little
into
fired
the...
up. Yeah. That's what I did. I turned it down a bit.
Because you are buzzing pretty high.
All right.
Guys, I wanted to get into something here, and I don't want to forget this. I want to get your take on this, Ken. Were you surprised the Jets didn't pull their? Like, I know that it ended up in a penalty kill towards the end of the game after Mark Scheifele's penalty, but the 2 minutes kind of after they allowed the fifth goal, and they didn't go back to pulling their goaltender. I was blown away by that. I mean, here's a team that basically we're looking at every loss for the rest of the season for the Jets here as being catastrophic, especially now. By my calculations, Ken, we had said they can afford a loss a week. Well, they've already borrowed from next week now, which means they got to be perfect for a while if they want to keep things, in the realm of possibility here. But were you not surprised that in that situation, a team that needs these kind of, I know that you may end up losing 6-2 or 7-2, and maybe that doesn't look good. And I don't know, maybe the answer is that the Jets would be too fragile to handle something like that. But they were already losing. There's nothing in a loss. Don't you have to throw everything you possibly have at that? Doesn't that include pulling Connor Hellebuyck a second time almost immediately after you let in that empty net goal?
It didn't bother me, and I'm not surprised, no. A 3-goal lead for a team that had barely generated enough in the game. I think you're asking for another empty net goal to be allowed.
What's the advantage in losing 5-2 as opposed to 6-2?
I mean, I'm not saying there's any advantage. I just don't think that it's a slight against the coach or anything like that. I mean, at that point, it was fairly obvious that the game. I mean, the Jets aren't the Columbus Blue Jackets right now. So, sorry, Colorado Avalanche, not the Columbus Blue Jackets. That was a quick one for DJ_ there. Yeah, it didn't bother me at all. Could they have done it? Sure, but. I just didn't see enough desperation in the game itself to suddenly suggest that with 4.5 minutes left that there would be desperation when you pull your goalie after you just gave up an empty netter. I mean, it created
isn't not pulling your goalie just an admission that you're not going to do anything? I mean, I think it sends the wrong message, to be honest with you. The message should be, we are trying to scrape for every single point. The Jets team didn't do that tonight, and the coaching decisions at the end of the night didn't suggest it either.
Yeah, I disagree. I mean, he showed desperation by pulling the goalie with 5 minutes left. I mean, that's where the desperation was. They gave up a goal right away. I mean, that's the way it goes. So, I wouldn't. That's a shoulder shrug for me.
Interesting. What do you think?
I mean, when's the last time that they did pull the goalie down by 3 goals? I don't think they've done it ever. I can't remember a time when they.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, you're looking around the league and you've got Dean Evison is down in the game 4-1, and he pulls his goaltender to start at 8 minutes left in the game, and then he does it again, and then they end up 4-3, and then they allow an empty net goal, and then they do it again, and then they allow another empty net goal, so they end up losing 6-3. But the message sent there is that we are going to scratch and claw for every single part of this. The Tampa Bay Lightning did the same thing. Like, the Jets didn't beat the Tampa Bay Lightning 7-4. They beat them 5-4, right? But they added a couple empty net goals. But isn't there value even in saying, okay, if we go out in a real game situation, practice pulling the goaltender and trying to put goals in late in the game? Is there not value in that? And if there's not value in it, why are guys like Dean Evison and John Cooper doing it?
I guess the only one thing that I would say in response to that is you pull your goalie with 5 minutes left, hoping that it generates some sort of spark, and you get scored on 15 seconds later. So, I mean, what are you supposed to do with that? I mean, there's no response from your team. Your team just goes up and gives one up right away. You don't even get the zone. You do nothing, right? I mean, so it just, I feel like there's goals going in all over the place here, Kenny. I mean, that's a loud ring.
25-13 right now is the final. That's the final.
Yeah.
No defense in that game
Have
either.
they pulled the goalie yet?
No, not yet. No.
No. But I just there was no, like, where was the risk profile change in that game at all in the third period? You're down, you go down, you come up 3-2, and then the Jets got loose again. Like, they got loose again and allowed that Bailey goal. It's just like you give yourself some hope in this game by Blake Wheeler goal gets carrying off of his skate and going into the net. And then all of a sudden you're just kind of like, whatever, wishy-washy play for the next little while. I don't know if the Jets felt like, okay, well, we got our goal 20 seconds in. We don't have to play for the next 10 minutes. But after that, it was just like, okay, and then Josh Bailey scores within those 10 minutes. And then at that point, you're chasing the game. But I thought the game was lost at 4-2 anyways. I mean, you have a good comeback, the good feelings there, and then it's gone completely when you give up another goal the same way you gave up the first two inside the first 2 minutes of the second period, where Josh Bailey just sits there and shovels in a backhand off a rebound uncontested. Like I don't know. The game was lost at 4-2. I mean, so I guess I see what you're saying, Sean. And in some cases, I agree with it. But when you give up a goal 15 seconds after pulling your goalie, there's just no. I don't know what else you do to wake up your team.
Let's move on. I got to go right shortly here. Let's move on.
Okay. Last one. You can weigh in if you want, or you can hop out if you want. Or not last one for the show, but last one for you if you're going to hop out. Was Scheifele's penalty at the end of the game and his chirping of the refs? Is that what Tim Peel was talking about, boys?
Good one. I'm not sure. I didn't even really see it in real time, but what I did see was Mark thought he was kicked out of the game, and he was literally down the tunnel, and they had to pull him out of the tunnel to go to the box to serve the penalty. So, and here's the thing, Sean. I don't know if they caught it on TV or not, but when he came back from down the tunnel, he went right up to the ref and chirped him on the way to the box. So
the ref had to give him had to stand at the penalty door and give him the point to the bench and sit down talk, right?
Right, or else I'm shocked that he didn't give him the old heave-ho, honestly. Yeah. I thought he was going to get teed up for 10.
Why did they pull him back out?
Well, no, it was just a minor penalty.
Yeah, but there was only like a minute 40 left in the game.
What if they score? He has to come out. It's a minor. That's why. I mean, you don't just go out. You don't get to have an early shower because you took a penalty, unless it's coincidental.
They should have just teed him up for 10 minutes then.
That line wasn't good enough tonight, so that's my last.
Well, I mean, they had their 2 points on the evening. If it was a 1 point game at a time, and it was a 1 point game because that line had 2 goals.
No, the line had 1 goal. Ehlers and Kyle Connor had the other
goal. Oh, sorry, yeah, that's right.
The line had 1 goal, and their expected goal number was horrible, absolutely atrocious.
They generated very little in the game.
Yeah, like it was really bad. Like they didn't show up for the game, in my opinion. So
that's interesting. I was looking at the expected goals, and I had seen that it was higher than.
The Jets' expected goals was fine. Oh
yeah.
Did that line actually bring it back up? I thought it was. Yeah, no, they actually brought it back up. I'm just looking at it now. You're right. Right. It was bad through 2 periods. I guess the goal that they scored really bumped up that number. So.
Yeah. Well, what did you guys think of Wheeler then? Let's break down individually. What did you think of Wheeler in that game? And I'll say this: I was having flashbacks of the Jets game against the Arizona Coyotes. We know how this game ended up, but at one point it kind of looked like they were going to push their way back into this game starting in the 3rd period, and it's their captain who kind of makes the push. Ken, I know you don't think there was enough tonight. What was the good and the bad of Blake Wheeler in this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think the bad is the penalty. I mean, it was very poor timing for an offensive zone minor. Blake was one of the guys who generated on that line. I think he had 4 shots on goal, and I mean, did get to the blue paint for his goal. So that was good. I just didn't feel like that line had much flow during the game. I didn't think that their speed game was there. I mean, again, it's a back-to-back. We know it's a difficult physical situation. You're right. There's not much travel. And again, like that's a line that could have used a power play to get themselves going. I mean, those are the kind of games where your legs aren't going. If you get it a few extra touches on the power play, it helps you. Paul Stastny, like I said, the good was that he got to the net on the goal by Wheeler. Made a couple of smart plays, but I didn't think that line had as much cohesion in the offensive zone. They didn't really have a cycle game going. They didn't generate off the rush. I didn't particularly like Scheifele's game. I thought he was a little bit casual with the puck again. Puck management was poor. Passed on a couple of situations again where he had clear shots, clear paths.
Didn't drive to the net.
Didn't drive to the net.
He could have gone.
Well, he did on that one, and it's interesting because I should bring this up and give credit to K Soy, our guy Kevin Sawyer on the broadcast. He's been kind of beating the drum on this the last couple of games, and I wanted to kind of dig into this a little bit because he's onto something here. How often do you see Mark Scheifele heading down the ice, have a shoulder on a guy, and you're thinking, if it was Pierre-Luc Dubois, he would just lean into that guy, and Mark Scheifele is a strong guy. He can do it. You saw him do it that one time he got the pass on the 4-on-4 and cut to the front of the net and made the deke. It was a nice save by Varlamov, probably his best save of the 3rd period, if not his best save of the game. But it's a time when Mark Scheifele gets the puck, has an edge to the net, and takes that edge. How often do you see Mark Scheifele get that edge, turn the guy's feet towards the net, and then he just button hooks back because he's got the guy's skates going in the wrong direction, and he wants to live in that space. He wants to live in that wide open space rather than kind of cut to the net. And Kevin Sawyer had said it tonight, and I thought it was pretty interesting. That he'd said that his belief is that Mark Scheifele would be doing a lot better for himself if, rather than cutting back to that open ice and trying to pass to the trailer or do whatever he does with the puck in that moment, if every once in a while, never mind every once in a while, more often than not when he had an edge, if he just drove the net. He did that, and there was it was interesting that it happened in the same game that Kevin Sawyer was saying that, although Kevin Sawyer did, I noticed, say it in the broadcast last night as well. But it was the perfect example of what Kevin was talking about. I asked a question of Mark Scheifele the other day, and it's funny because Kevin Sawyer came after I asked that question. I think he knew I was trying to get to the same thing and kind of talked to me about what he was seeing out there. But if you remember, Paul Maurice used to talk about Nick Ehlers and say what changed in his game that made him more dangerous is he was starting to approach the game like a shooter. Not like a guy who was like living in the soft areas, but a guy who was trying to drive to the net and shoot the puck. And we saw just not that long ago, guys, what Mark Scheifele looked like when he was playing like a shooter, when he had all those one-timers, when he sent that game to overtime against the Dallas Stars. And I asked him about that balance of playing when you're as good at passing as he is, but you're also as good at shooting as he is. Is there maybe a mindset on where you need to lie to find the right balance between knowing when to shoot the puck, knowing when to drive to the net, and knowing when to peel off and pass? He didn't want anything to do with that question. What Scott, I'll start with you. Where are you? You got to go?
Yeah.
Do you want it to handle?
He needs to shoot. He needs to shoot more.
Yeah.
He has a great shot. Yes, he's always been a good distributor of the puck. He's got a great shot, and he needs to unload it more. That is my concise answer, and I will
final answer.
I will cede the floor and enjoy the weekend.
That's not a buffet. That's like taking one of you. It's like you just went to a party and hors d'oeuvres were going around, and you took one off the plate, popped in your mouth, and said, "I'm out, everybody. We'll see you later."
I told you I'd spend half an hour, and I've spent 47 minutes. I've spent plenty of time at the buffet, my man.
I know. That's good stuff. We appreciate that, Ken. Thank you for joining with us. Are you on your way home now?
Yeah, see you Sunday.
The boys are
going to St. Louis, and then
you're going to St. Louis. Okay, yeah. Enjoy your time in St. Louis. Hey, get to the Blues City Deli if you can. I don't know if it's open on Sunday. Get to the Blues City Deli, and if you like meatball sandwiches, and who doesn't, get yourself a meatball sandwiches. Absolutely.
Have an awesome weekend, and everyone, if you haven't checked it out, check out the Sheldon Kennedy long form from Thursday. It was a fantastic listen and just incredible insight by a great human being.
All right, good stuff.
Take care, guys.
Thanks for being there. Let's see you.
My pleasure.
Okay,
Cheers.
Scotty, now that Ken's dropped out of the show, it's party time. Let's make this a Sean's Headband version of the Kenny and Renny Show. Finally, Scott, we can let our hair down, and Kenny's not blowing up our audio either, which is absolutely great. There's something about the three-way interplay of the mics that happens with it. I don't want you taking just an hors d'oeuvre, Scotty. I want to dig into this a little bit more. The Mark Scheifele issue. I think it's pretty obvious that he needs to shoot more. Why do you think a guy who has the shot that he had, you would think? Every shooter I've known who's played hockey before, when they get into that rhythm where they're taking those shots and just everything they're shooting seems to go into the back of the net, it's hard to get those guys to stop shooting. In fact, what typically happens to those guys is they overshoot to the point that they start messing up plays, and the guys who play on the line with them get a little frustrated because they're at the side of the net and they're saying, I was right there, you could have passed it to me and I could have tapped it in. I didn't see that happen with Mark Scheifele. I saw a guy who was shooting the puck at that time as good as anyone in the league, maybe outside of Patrick Laine, who just suddenly stopped shooting the puck towards the net. What happened, and what leads Mark Scheifele to abandon a tool that the vast majority, that the 99% of hockey players in the NHL itself would die to have?
I know. Yeah, and that's a huge question that I had no answer for, because we were talking about this. I don't know if it was, I think it was me and Tim Campbell, maybe during the I want to say the Tampa game, maybe it was the one before that. But you're just trying to figure out, like, okay, Mark Scheifele can come out here and really just take control of the game, right? Like you think back to the 2017-18 playoffs against Nashville. Well, throughout the whole playoffs, so right, here's a guy who has all of this skill and sometimes never presses the button to turn it on. And like, you don't know why it is, right? Like, he has it, it's there. He knows he can do it. I mean, there's times, the reason why Mark Scheifele was able to, wanted to talk to and put himself in the same vein as Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and all that, was his ability to do that, right? His ability to take over a game, to, in the Arizona game, fire one from the point on a one-timer and put it in back to the net. That's what he's able to do. But then you see it tonight in the first period where he has the puck and he just kind of skates into nowhereville. And you're just like, why isn't he shooting there? Why is he trying to pass? Why with a guy that has the shot? And I think Kevin Sawyer was right. I mean, he has been banging this drum. And I know people, here's the thing with the whole Kevin Sawyer, just as a tangent here. If you want to criticize Kevin Sawyer for not being critical of the team, then you can't criticize him when he is being critical of a guy like Mark Scheifele. And I thought,
maybe it's not the same players, right? Maybe it's not the same people.
You might be right, but
and sorry, just let me. I'm going to just finish this point.
Go for it.
That kind of hammers home what a guy in his position, the line he has to straddle, right? Like, if he's critical of the team, you're going to have a large chunk of the fan base that's going to be like, this guy's on our broadcast, what's he doing ripping the Jets? And then if you're not critical of the team, the fans that aren't are maybe a little more discerning and are less afraid to point out when the team isn't doing what they should be, are upset because they don't think he's being hard enough on the team. It's a tough line to straddle. Sorry to cut you off, Scott.
Yeah. I just think that if you're going to criticize a guy, you got to criticize the guys that are, like, have a huge impact on the game. And I'm not saying that that's the case. I just, whatever. Mark needs to do more of what Mark has really been good at. And I don't understand what the deal is with Mark. And part of me, somebody said to me about Connor Hellebuyck that one of the reasons why Connor Hellebuyck kind of faded in the first half of the season, and it's been a struggle, is that these guys really amped up to try and make the Olympics. I mean, Connor Hellebuyck was, he was obviously going to be on the Olympic team. Mark Scheifele
You're on to something here, Scott. Sorry, people, listen up. I never thought about this, but Scott, bang on, get at it.
Well, and this is what somebody told me, and I'm not going to say who it was because that's what we don't do that. I feel like Elliot Friedman here. I listened to the 32,000. Well, somebody told me this and whatever. So this is my insider moment, right? But no, it's just like, these guys were so amped up, and Mark Scheifele talked about it coming to the year, right? Like, this is a guy that wanted to make he was on the bubble. I mean, let's not make, but he wanted to do that. It was a tough start for Mark, but when the Olympic dream left and went away, I think a lot of these guys, not everybody, but a couple of the guys on the Jets really kind of took it hard. And I was told, that this might have been the case for Connor Hellebuyck. And, here's a guy who's really getting amped up, wanted to play in that, played well, I thought, in stretches. And I want to say November might have been his best month this season. I think he was like a 930 in November, Hellebuyck, right? And then the edict comes down that you're not playing, and then it's a struggle. And I don't know if that's I don't know if that's the case for Mark Scheifele, but if it's the case for Connor Hellebuyck, why would it not be the case for Mark Scheifele? And maybe that's kind of where I'm at with that. Because I think that that's a huge letdown, especially for a guy like Mark Scheifele, who is probably not going to get another shot at playing at the Olympics. Let's say they go in what year, in 2026.
Yeah.
Mark Scheifele's not on that roster, right? I mean, Connor Hellebuyck maybe, but Mark Scheifele's not on that roster. So that goes away, and then your season's starting to dwindle, your coach walks out on you, and then I just wonder, it's been a tough year, right? And so but I kind of wonder with that Olympic thing and what I was told on that with Hellebuyck, I wonder if that is extended to Mark Scheifele. And maybe in some smaller aspects to Andrew Kopp, who I'm not sure if he had a huge chance of making that team, but the way he started, I mean, he was putting himself on that radar, right? And I just don't think that Mark Scheifele. I don't know. I don't know. Again, this is kind of speculation on Scheifele's part, But with Hellebuck, it's a deflating moment, I think, and I wonder if that was the case for Mark Scheifele, who told us coming into the season that this was going to be a big one and all that. I mean, we all speculated this would be Mark Scheifele's best season as a pro, at least his best start to the season as a pro, and it never got there. So,
the one thing, and I hadn't thought like this before, Scott. I hadn't thought because I had wondered, that was a lot of the storylines that we did on Hockey Night in Canada at the beginning of the season. One of the things that, it's interesting that they're playing the Islanders tonight, because I had a talk with Barry Trotz the first time around when he was in town. And he'd had very open and honest conversations with the guys on his team that had a chance of making Team Canada. So Pollock and Pellick, who I thought both had really, really good games tonight. Boy, if Ryan Pollock, Manitoba, he's doing Manitoba proud out there. But a guy like Matt Barzal as well, who is a guy who in the last couple of years in the playoffs has shown that he's a guy who can get his team downhill into a good position in the playoffs the way that he has. He told all his players, like, they are watching, they are being analyzed. Don't pretend that this isn't happening and just do whatever. This is your opportunity. You need to go out and take it. Now, I'm not so sure that it turned out too well for those guys. I think that in the end, he put a lot of pressure on those players, and I'm not sure that they did respond the way that you would have expected from them. But the one thing that's, Scott, when the NHL to the Olympics dream died, I almost thought that there would be relief from Mark Scheifele, because I don't think the way that he was playing, it would have been very difficult. I mean, maybe there was some hope. You can always have hope, and you can say maybe what I've done in the past has earned me on there. Maybe Mark Scheifele had conversations behind the scenes with members of the selection staff, and maybe they'd said, because there are always those players on Team Canada that you're like, seriously, they're going to take that guy? He doesn't seem to be having the best year. And then you see that guy get taken, put on Team Canada, and they absolutely light it up, right? But I honestly took a look at that situation. I thought it wasn't going to work out well for Mark Scheifele, and I thought that it was going to have to save him from the announcement that he didn't make Team Canada. I mean, basically, we'd all thrown our list together, and I think there was a lot of us that felt like it was going to come down to him or Jonathan Huberdeau, right?
Yeah.
Who were going to make that kind of final spot. Yeah. And I don't know how you would have taken, some people have suggested that. I know that two very well-known Sportsnet personalities, when I was down with them in Florida, had made a bet for a pair of Air Jordans. One person saying that Huberdeau was going to make the team, the other person saying he wasn't going to make the team. I full on, Scotty, thought Jonathan Huberdeau had that team made lock, stock, and two smoking barrels. I mean, how can you not take the second highest, and for a lot of stretches of the year this year, the first highest scoring Canadian, put them on the team? That's overthinking it, if you ask me, if they go down that road. But yeah. I haven't been thinking the way that you are thinking, because I don't know that it wasn't an opportunity for Mark Scheifele to miss the disappointment of the public outing of them saying that he maybe wasn't good enough to make Team Canada the way that he was playing this year. Now, and I take a look at the other guys around the league, guys like Jonathan Huberdeau, or let's say a guy like Johnny Gaudreau out of Calgary. We're taking a look at a lot of other guys around the league who lost out on the same opportunity that Mark Scheifele has lost out on here, and are still absolutely shooting the lights out, and they haven't allowed that to take away from their game. So I will say this, if that's what's happening in Winnipeg, if there is this little bit of a letdown and a sag because the Olympics aren't happening this year, I would suggest that maybe the Jets players who thought they could go to the Olympics were focusing too much on the Olympics and not enough on this season. Because if you're allowing yourself to let this season slip away because you didn't get to that team, that tells me your focus was not in the place it should have been. It should be with your team first and foremost. Then everything goes pause, and then you start thinking Olympics. If what you're suggesting is true, then I suggest that there could be some players who didn't necessarily have their priorities straight this season. Scott, I wanted to ask you about Nick Ehlers' usage tonight. Here, I'm not even just going to go to Nick Ehlers. I'm going to go to usage all around because I thought there were some interesting decisions tonight, and I'll bring them out. Nick Ehlers getting moved up to the second line, Svechnikov getting moved down. That's a direction we could go. In that 4-on-4 towards the end of the game when they did end up pulling the goaltender, the first two players out on the ice were Ehlers and Connor. I get that because Ehlers and Connor had the goal together tonight and were, kind of playing. Connor set Ehlers up on a really nice play and tight. The second pair that he went out with after that was Scheifele and Dubois, which I thought was extremely interesting, especially because I know there's a lot of people who get frustrated with Blake Wheeler, but I thought Blake Wheeler, like Kenny, was the best player on his line tonight and had deserved maybe an opportunity. What did you think of, and you can take it in any direction you want, what did you think of Dave Lowry and the way he executed his bench tonight?
I like the idea that he went to it early. And I think I like it because, it's kind of a message sending, right? It's like, okay, it's not working early for this line. But then I looked, and I look at the analytics to try and figure out, okay, was this a good idea? Was it a bad idea? I don't know. You will look at the line change because you'll say, oh, here's Nikolai Ehlers and Kyle Connor on a 2-on-0, and it worked, right? It worked out brilliantly for him, but for Dave Lowry. But I don't think that's actually true. I think you had a very big anomaly. Ryan Pulock comes into the zone, trying and puts a howitzer on Hellebuck. Then as he's curling around to come back and defend, he trips. And it's a bad line change, too, on the other end of it. So there's nobody covering the other point. And so all of a sudden you have the 2-on-0. I mean, that's a very isolated incident on a team that is as defensively as good as the Islanders are, right? So, I mean, that's something. But then if you look, the Ehlers-Connor-Dubois pairing, I don't think it worked very well. And here's the problem is they don't play defense, right? That's part of the issue with that line. And then the reason why Svechnikov's on that line is partly, because he's first in on the forecheck, but secondly, that he plays a responsible game defensively. And that's what he's, generally been half decent or pretty good at this season, analytically at least. So, I get that you're trying, but I thought part of it too was they need to get Nikolai Ehlers going, right? I mean, here's the thing, like this is Nikolai Ehlers who should be playing top 6 minutes. The problem is, and you're right. Okay, I'll concede that Blake Wheeler was the best person on that line on his line tonight. But is that not the guy that needs to move down right now and do it? If you're trying to move Evgeny Svechnikov off the second line because you need a reason to put Nikolai Ehlers there, I get it. But here's a line that's been pretty good for your team lately, ever since they put them back together. And so why is it that? I said it during the game. Like, why is that top line so untouchable at times? And it's still, this is a thing that is carried over from Paul Maurice era into the Dave Lowry era, and it's just like they don't want to break it up, and I don't understand why. Because Nikolai Ehlers and Mark Scheifele have played well together in the past, and you could easily move Blake Wheeler down to that third line and have a pretty big and pretty responsible third checking line with Andrew Kopp and Adam Lowry there as well. So what, like, I don't understand it. I don't get why they just refuse. It seems like the tinkering can happen anywhere else except that top line. And it's like, I mean, I don't know, like this is speculation, I suppose, but is it because, and you've used the word fragile, and I'll use it here. If you move Blake Wheeler off that line, how much does that impact Mark Scheifele's game? Does he pout or whatever? I don't know what it might be, right? But I'm just wondering, like, do you leave that line together simply because it causes more problems to break it up than it does to keep it together? But at the same time, I mean, this is a team that needs to win. They need Nikolai Ehlers going, and he's played well. Don't get me wrong, he's played well on that third line. But this is a guy that can use his speed much better playing with Mark Scheifele, or much better playing with Kyle Connor. The problem with that line is just the defensive deficiencies that it has. But yeah, like I think that line, and if you want to make line changes, that's fine. But I mean, move Blake Wheeler or move Paul Stastny. Paul Stastny will play wherever. He's always said that, and he's always gone there, and he's always played well. So why don't you put him there with on the side with Paul Stastny then? But it's just I don't understand, and this has been something that's been since Paul Maurice was here, that they just don't want to break up those two, Scheifele and Blake Wheeler, whatever it is. They don't break them up, and I don't understand why. If the culture has changed since Paul Maurice left and all that, why is it still a problem to move those two? And I think that's the biggest issue here, is that you're trying to fit Nikolai Ehlers into the top 6, but you don't really know where to put him because it's disrupting something that, yeah, like I said, is probably going to cause more issues than it needs to, and that's a problem in and of itself. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a weird one, and I don't know what the answer is to the question, because they just don't seem to. I don't know. It makes no sense. I think if you had anybody else in here look at this team, and be like, why isn't Nikolai Ehlers playing in the top 6? And then you put him there, and then you just revert back to it after that. I don't get it.
There's a bunch of things to talk about there. First of all, and they said it in the TSN broadcast, Mark Scheifele, does he have 8 points in his last 4 games? I think that's right. what it is. So that I'm sure will have something to do with it. The fact that line was going. Yeah. If you ask, I know what you're saying. I'm gonna jump on both sides of the point here. Sure. As I go through this. I'm gonna kind of try and talk my way through this. But I think if you ask Dave Lowry's answer would go something like that. You want me to split up 2 guys who produce, have this many points over the last couple of games, and tore it up in those games. That's what he would suggest, I think. But on the other side of that, if you take a look at earlier this season when you did try to break things up a little bit, that did work. And the thing that reminds me of that is, I may be wrong, but if I remember correctly, Sportsnet, we did 2 national broadcasts back to back with the Jets. One of them, or else they were Monday to I think it was a Saturday and a Monday game. They were close. Anyways, one of them was the last game against the Islanders, and the Islanders won that one. But the other one, I believe, was the LA Kings game, the one where Dylan DeMello sneaks up ice, scores late, and who scores in overtime on a line, a separate line than Blake Wheeler at the time. It's Mark Scheifele scores in overtime, and I think it is a feed from Nick Ehlers at the time. So I know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're saying. I know that the kind of forced. This was a time when they were trying to get Mark Scheifele going, and that's kind of what woke Mark Scheifele up, was being on a different line. So I think the point you're making is an important point that needs to be made. Now, why don't they split those 2 players up? If I was a betting man, I would suggest those players say time and time again they don't want to be split up. I don't know if you've noticed this, Scott, but how often do you see those 2 players lining up side by side on 2-on-1 drills during practice? They are hand in hand at all times,
hanging out together
at the end of the all times. Yeah, they practice every drill together. This isn't one of these things where you go up randomly. Maybe it is for the rest of the team, where you go randomly and you go down ice, and it ends up being a guy from the first line and the fourth line, and a guy from the second line and the third line. Those 2 practice together nonstop. They are symbiotic. They're like Venom in the Spider-Man comics, right? There are 2 entities joined together to be one entity, and that's how they want to be. They don't want that ripped apart. But the last point I wanted to make about this is, I know for the Jets it makes the most sense to pull Evgeny Svechnikov off that line. Like you're saying, you're trying to find a spot in the top 6 for Nick Ehlers. The one that makes most sense to pull off is Evgeny Svechnikov, because you've done it to him all year. Right? It's happened time and time again. And I do wonder, Scott, if another team comes calling in the offseason. I've already been down this road. The Jets have his rights for a while here, so it can't turn out like that. But I do think the Jets prioritize a guy, even though he may be gone in 10 days or something like that. They prioritize a guy like Stastny over Svechnikov, and of course they do a guy like Nick Ehlers. But I don't think it's one of these decisions that should be like take him out because he's the one we need to worry or at least worry about angering or upsetting, because that's his role on this team. I think that line has been working. And if you're going to set a standard for Svechnikov or even Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois, that, you know what, if something's not going tickety-boo like that night, we're going to rip you apart and we're going to try something different. Now, it would be awesome to add Nick Ehlers to your line. I'm not saying that they're upset about that, but what you're talking about, the fact that it's like a rock, you cannot break apart Scheifele and Wheeler. But if Dubois, Svechnikov, and Kyle Connor, who have talked lately about how much they like playing together, can get broken up and put together that easy, I think that there's a little bit of that looking over your shoulder quality that starts happening with that team. So, and especially that line. So the way I look at it, the usage tonight I thought was interesting. I thought Svechnikov getting pulled down was a little bit of a tough one. I think it's just another one of those things where the guy's been proving lately he deserves to be where he is. You made a good point. His physicality and his defensive play is a nice add to that line. And Dave Lowry said it himself. Pierre-Luc Dubois is a bull in a china shop. Yeah. Kyle Connor is a lethal, speedy ninja assassin. Yeah. And Svechnikov lives somewhere in the middle of those two. And that's why it works, because you've got guys on the far ends of the spectrum and a guy right in the middle of the spectrum. To your point, Nick Ehlers is a little bit more on the Kyle Connor side of the spectrum, and maybe it doesn't work as much. The idea of having Svechnikov there is one I like, not just because of what I've seen from a bit, but the idea of being able to spread depth down the lineup. And the point that you make about splitting up a guy like Blake Wheeler and maybe putting him with Kyle Connor, not Kyle Connor, putting him with Andrew Copp, or to your point, taking a guy like Stastny and putting him down with Adam Lowry and having two big boys, two guys who have a lot of smarts, two guys who have defensive responsibility. Sounds like a really good balance across that line to me. And then you've got Andrew Copp, who we know plays well with Mark Scheifele, Nick Ehlers, who we've seen play well with Mark Scheifele, and Copp and Ehlers play well together. Maybe that's the way that you create that depth that you're looking for, and that was definitely not on display tonight. Scott, I'm going to give you room for last thoughts here, and then we should shut this down.
Yeah, and that's what I think, right? Like this team, you know, we say it all the time, this team is so top heavy, right? But we also say in the same vein that you look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, they have 4 lines that can play. Well, the Jets can easily make 3 lines that can play. They just never do it. And I don't understand it, right? This goes back to the Paul Maurice era, right? Because you know, they found lightning in a bottle when they had Brandon Tanev and Copp and Lowry all on the same line. That line was elite. And I wrote about this like 4 years ago, because the way that they possessed the puck and the way that they created scoring chances and expected goals, whatever, you know, it worked, right? And so that's when, and that's 2017-18. That's when they went to the Western Final. They had a good line then, right? So here's the problem, though, is that, you know, now it's just like they rely on it and they live and die by the Mark Scheifele line, right? And so here you got Nikolai Ehlers, who is an incredible offensive, you know, talent, who has 1 goal since he's come back, right? And it's because you're putting him in a spot that he's not going to. First of all, he's going to play less minutes just because of the nature of the line that he's on. And when you're really trying to search for offense in games, you're going to play your top 2 lines, and then they haven't really moved him up. In the last 2 games, they've tried it a couple times. But yeah, there's just not enough going on here. The Jets want to be a 3 or 4 line team, but they never want to actually do it, right? Like the idea is good, everything there is sound, you know, they have the parts for it, but then they just force this one line out every game. And sure, sometimes it does well, right? Like these are good players, elite players in certain senses. You know, Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler are going to get their points. But is it better for the team to break them up for the whole team instead of individual? Like, here's the thing. Like, I mean, you know, Blake Wheeler's not going to get another contract. Well, you might get one, but it's going to be the 1-year kind of variety type thing. Mark Scheifele, sure, yeah, he's playing for another contract. But Mark Scheifele's the type of player that can play with other players and be good. I mean, we've seen it before. It's been such small spurts that they don't allow it to to blossom like they did with the Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois line, right? Here's the thing, like, these guys graduated Kyle Connor into the player that he is. So why can't Mark Scheifele do that? And why can't Blake Wheeler do that? And I don't understand. And I get it. You're right. I mean, they practice all the time together. It's symbiotic. It's telekinesis, whatever you want to call it, right? Like there's all those things. But for the betterment of this team, and if you're going to keep Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele around for the next 2 years of the remaining on their contracts after this year, I mean, what do you want to do? Do you want to play for the next contract, or do you want to try and win? And I don't think Mark Scheifele is hampered by not having Blake Wheeler there. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. Anyways, I mean, I just it's got to be frustrating for fans to just watch this happen over and over. And it's the definition of insanity, right? I mean, I see this all the time in my mentions when the lines don't change or whatever. Like nothing changes, right? It's like Logan Stanley and Nate Schmidt together. It doesn't work, but they keep pushing it out there, even though they got Ville Heinola in the press box. They won't play him, right? It's just, I don't understand it, because this team is going to very likely not make the playoffs. So at that point, why don't you throw caution to the wind and start trying to find some different things that may work? And maybe that helps you propel you. Maybe it doesn't, but then at least you see something. And this is a team where it's like, yeah, they could have been, here's the thing, they could have been 3 points back tonight, but they didn't play well enough to even try to get 3 points back tonight. Out of a playoff spot, right? Like that's the part that I don't understand. The urgency isn't there with the lines that you have. Maybe one line and maybe one line on another night, but it never. We talked about this. We asked these questions maybe a week ago. Why is there only one line? I mean, you might even ask the question. Why is it only that one line goes? Why can't two lines be going? Why is it so difficult for this team to have all the talent working in unison? And I don't think it's because they're not put together properly. You have one line. Well, that's the thing. Winnipeg doesn't have an identity. Every night is a chance for them to forge an identity, and that's what comes out of the game, right? Like, I mean, that's the thing. I do agree that the answer is letters. I mean, but I don't think it's Josh Morrissey either, right? Like, and I think that some of the leadership on this team is happening from guys that aren't. I mean, we've seen Nikolai Ehlers after the one game. After the one loss, kind of bear so Pierre-Luc Dubois during the 6 game twice in 1 week, twice in like 3 games, kind of bearing his soul. Those are the leadership. So yeah. It just, I don't know. It's frustrating to even report on sometimes, because you ask the questions and you know this, Sean. I mean, you ask questions and they kind of get brushed off, or they'll say, oh well, I mean, like you said when you said what about Mark Scheifele, he has 8 points in his last 5 games now. So, and, so why would you put that, why would you take that apart? But sometimes it's not about, the individual thing or what the line's doing, but trying to make the team better. And then they just don't do it. They don't do it. And yes, goaltending was their identity. I mean, that's what it was, right? Connor Hellebuyck saved their butts. And we're seeing this year when Connor Hellebuyck can't save their asses, this is what happens, right? This is the exact same thing that would happen in the past 2 seasons if Connor Hellebuyck wasn't playing at his absolute best. And maybe some people say he had a bit of a down year last year, but when we won the Vezina, I mean, he pulled the Jets kicking and screaming into the playoffs. And he's done that before. So anyways, I'm just...
You're freestyling.
Yeah, I'm rambling on about it. I'm freestyling off of the chat, right? The chat's great, and I wish we could get to more of the chat stuff, because they have, there's a lot of good points in the chat. Like we ask the questions that usually, and you've said this on the show before, we ask the questions that the fans are asking, right? I mean, it's not like
we better be. That's our job. Yeah, that's our job.
And so when Blake Wheeler gets mad about Jeff Hamilton, who's been on the show, obviously, I see his name in the chat. When he gets kind of all bristly at a question about, I don't know, even my mind's going at 100 miles an hour right now. But the point is, I mean, it's just, these aren't the questions that we're asking. These questions somewhat on behalf of the fans, because we have that ability to do that. And it's not like the fans. I mean, read the chat. Everybody in here is very well versed in this team, has opinions, obviously. Some are right, some are wrong, some are in the middle, but at the same time, they know what's wrong with the team. They can see it just like we're talking about, and can see it ourselves. And we're not coaches on the team. We're not GMs. We're not the players, but like I can't imagine that the Jets and anybody in that organization right now is kind of sitting there, oh, this is good. They're sitting there like that fire meme where, everything's fine or whatever. And the fire's
Yeah,
coming
the
out.
dog. Yeah.
Right. But that's it, right? Like, I mean, I don't think anybody else is not seeing it. I just don't know what you do about it mid-season. But it just feels like this is just another lost year. And this problem is the same problems keep presenting themselves, poor defensive structure, no identity, those types of things, right? Gone are the days of the 2017-18 season, the 2018-19, at least the first half, right? It's just been downhill since then. And you're kind of wasting a lot of talent, including, in my opinion, Connor Hellebuck, who is, one of the best goalies in the world. And I know people think that I just, I get behind Hellebuck all the time, but yeah, but it's just like, this is a guy that has been so good for this franchise. And then when he's faltering, nobody can help pick him up. I mean, that's a problem, right? Like, I mean, here's the thing, like, the guys in front of him should be playing for, Josh Morrissey talked about after the game. I mean, how, they need to be playing. This is a guy that he said himself that dragged them into the playoffs for the past 2 seasons. Well, where's the reciprocation when he's not playing well? I mean, I don't know. Anyways, I can keep going for hours in here on this stuff, but yeah.
I just think the answer to that question is they fell into a style, right? Like there was, I know what you're saying. There should have been a recognition that they were surviving because their goaltender was keeping them afloat, and instead of turning around and saying let's get them back, they turned around and said, well, we can win like this. This is our style. And you know what? Someone nailed it. They said that has been the Jets' identity for a long time, as a team that gets saved by goaltending and then goes down the other way. And I think it's interesting because one of the things that we've looked at time and time again is that we've always thought of this Jets team as being a really, really dangerous offensive team and I think one of the things that kind of hammered that home is the other team would come down and they would try to score over and over and over and over and over again, and they couldn't score. And then the Jets would go and get 1 or 2 chances, and boom, it was in the back of the net, right? And you would think clearly our guys are better than their guys. They're more, offensively gifted than their guys, because those guys keep trying to score and they can't. And our guys go down and get a couple chances and they do. Well, there's a couple things to that. One, the Jets aren't shooting on Connor Hellebuck. But 2, and we've talked about this before, and you saw it happen in the first goal the Jets scored tonight, when a team starts kind of rolling the giant snowball downhill offensively, you get sucked in and you get a chance and another chance, another chance, another chance. And then all of a sudden, too many guys get sucked in down ice, and then you just chip it back and guys are going the other way. That is exactly what happened on that first goal. Again, this is the thing that I've hammered home time and time again, and I've been doing it since last year. That is the Jets' identity, or it's been a big part of their identity for a really long time, is that they're a team that, like, those kind of goals, other teams don't score those goals, but the Jets score them all the time because that's kind of the how they decide to play. I wanted to end on one last thing. Someone had been talking about B. Anderson said early in the show, and you touched on it. If they win tonight, they would have been 3 points out of a playoff spot. Yeah. I know that sounds tight. I know it's tempting to say all these numbers that we hear about and how hard it's going to be for the Jets to make the playoffs is not that big of a deal. B. Henderson pointing it out here. They're only 5 points out of a playoff spot. They're 5 points out of a playoff spot on a team that has 3 games in hand on them. Win those 3 games in hand, they're 11 points out of a playoff spot. That is a massive, massive hole to dig yourself out of. Now, are they going to win all 3 of those games? Dallas, probably not, but their win-loss record tells us that they're likely to take at least 3, if not 4 of those points on average. That's what you can expect from that team, which means that maybe they look like they're 5 points out of the playoff spot, but they're actually 8 to 9 points bearing the numbers out of a playoff spot. And again, that is a huge hole. And now we're down to 23 games after this. It's a tough one. The Jets now, by my estimation, have room for 6 more losses this season. That is it. 6 more losses. If they go in and lose to St. Louis in their next game, they're down to 5 losses for the rest of the season, with big games coming up against teams like they'll face Tampa Bay Lightning again, they'll face the Calgary Flames again, they'll face the Florida Panthers again, they face the Colorado Avalanche again. Let's go on and on. There's a lot of really tough games down the stretch here. Never mind the fact that you can see a team like the New York Islanders will take 2 points off the Jets here tonight. It's not an easy haul. If you are leaving yourself that little margin for error, the chances of things turning out well for you are not very good. That's going to be it for us, Scotty. It means a ton to me that you joined us for the last half of the show here. We really appreciate it, and I know that our chat room absolutely appreciates it as well. We always rock it when you can't come on. And again, Scotty was right. Boy, oh boy, did we ever borrow a lot from the chat room tonight. You guys were feeding us all night, and it gets pretty easy. When you guys are lobbing beach balls to us, it's easy to knock them over the fence. We very much appreciate that. Thank you, everybody. A couple things before we go. If you haven't got your wake-up mug that Scotty's showing you, or if you're interested in one of those, go to www.shopsportsnet.store for all your Kenny and Renny merchandise. We really appreciate the people who have chipped in for that. And it's been talked about a little bit here in the chat room. We did our long form show yesterday with Sheldon Kennedy. To me, it is the most important show that we have ever done. It was really good stuff. If you have the time, please go check that out. I promise you, a Manitoba boy like that who has saved thousands, if not millions of lives by the courage he's shown and continues to show every day in his life, it is well worth your time. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We will see you after the game on Sunday.